members and meeting of the Truckee Donner Public Utility District. If we could get a roll call, please.
Sure. Director Morrell?
Here.
Director Randall? Here. Director Bender?
Here.
Vice President Laliotis?
Here.
President Finn?
Here. Great. We're all here. Let's go ahead and do the pledge. Let's see. Director Bender, look to the left. If you wouldn't mind leading us.
Okay, ready, begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Brian, do we have any changes to the agenda this evening?
There are no changes this evening.
Fantastic. Which brings us to public comment. So this is time that is set aside for the public to comment on, address the board on any matter that is not on the agenda tonight. So testimony related to agendized items should come at the time that that item is being addressed. Do we have any public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none. We move on to director updates. Directors. Director Morrell, would you like to start?
I will. I had the pleasure of being on another board, Tahoe Donner's board, and I got to listen to the PUD update from our general manager, Brian Wright, and PIO, Stephen Poncelet. And that was really informative, and I hear it often being here on this board, but a general presentation of what the PUD is doing. And Tahoe Donner was very interested, very engaged. It's a board that does their homework and has good questions, inquisitive, and it was great. I got feedback afterwards, and Tahoe Donner really appreciated what the PUD is doing and the strategic initiatives on the water and electric side and fire mitigation. So thank you for coming up to Tahoe Donner. It was really informative.
Thank you, Director Morrell. Director Laliotis?
No updates, thank you.
No updates from Director Laliotis? None from either directors to my right tonight. Perfect. I do have a quick bit of information I would like to share with my fellow board members for the most part. A heads up that I have requested that staff put together a formal resolution supporting library's upcoming Measure G. I know that it's unusual maybe for a district to sort of take sides on an issue, but I don't see this as a taking sides situation. Modern library is a community asset that really benefits everyone, and there are no sides there. So access to knowledge, in my opinion, is more foundational than even the services that we provide. We can't provide our services without the knowledge of how to do it, and that is what libraries are for. Access to knowledge, I can't overstate the importance. So a library teaches us how to do just that. It provides resources for pretty much everything that you might want to do. How to pay your taxes, how to get a job, how to build a birdhouse, how to solve a murder. So many handy skills available at our library. So on forever. So I just would like you all to think about that, to organize your thoughts, clarify your position on this, and become prepared at the next meeting to vote your own values on the resolution.
Can I add to that? I just want to say the PUD played a role in that with land and granting easements and anyway, part of the getting it going. And so the PUD did play a role in that, so I think it's appropriate.
And I think we will continue to play a role in how the building is, standards to which it's built and renewable energy, and I know they're talking about solar panels and a community emergency spot, so there's really a lot to be accomplished, I think, with this
I think so.
Building, this project. So thank you all very much. And that brings us to department updates.
Evening, President. Again, good evening, President Finn, members of the board. Mike Swanson reporting out for Electric Engineering and Operations. So we'll start once again with power outages that we had for the month of July. We got one that's in August. Thought we were having a great month, and it might be the first one where I didn't have to report an outage. However, we did have some outages third week in July. On July 22nd, we had a animal-caused substation level outage on Tahoe Donner substation. It impacted 4,100 customers. On Tuesday, July 24th, with our second animal-related outage, which occurred at the fuse level in the Zermatt area of Tahoe Donner, it affected 135 customers. On Friday, July 25th, NV Energy had an outage that impacted our Glenshire area, 518 customers of our customers. It was caused by the heavy rain and lightning. You may recall it took place that day. We have some opportunity to work with our peer utilities in coordination of how we're going to get outage restoration. Outage took much longer than I anticipated it taking, and it was mainly because coordination between us, NV Energy, as well as Liberty. So I'm setting up a meeting to hopefully rectify some of those issues moving forward. And then on Friday, last Friday, August 1st, we had a dead tree, fell into our conductors. It impacted 880 customers on our Truckee 4 circuit, which is in the, I believe it's called the Armstrong track off of Richards Road Boulevard. That outage took out our entire circuit. Small fire was started. We had the fire personnel responded, mopped up the fire. We had residents that jumped in with response and assisted in putting out that fire. It was roughly 8 by 8, maybe a little smaller, maybe a little bigger, but we were fortunate there. We weren't in high wind conditions or anything like that. So our tree efforts continue to help us mitigate these type of incidents, as well as our PPS should we get into that circumstance with the weather conditions. We also held our annual rubber glove training. This is a requirement by OSHA that allows us to perform rubber glove work. This is linemen working high voltage with rubber gloves on, as well as other protective equipment, including the insulated bucket trucks. This training took place both hands-on as well as classroom training. And I thought I'd give an update on our Martis Valley substation. So that is making great headway. We got a lot of the substructure work complete, the duct work complete. As you can see, it's pretty extensive duct work going on at this location. The slurry was poured over the top yesterday, and we expect the pad to be poured in the next 2 weeks. And that will set us up. So we're on schedule for the delivery of the switchgear. Again, another evaluation we're doing, we're looking at different cover-ups. So I've mentioned the covered conductor, the ductile iron poles. Covered conductor doesn't quite get us all the way there because there would still be exposed components of energized conductors. So these covers will allow us to cover 100% of our bare conductor. And again, this is evaluation we have ongoing. I think we've settled on this particular brand, and it seems to be much more rigid and able to withstand the elements that Truckee experiences. And again, our key focus, a lot of this is the same. I'm just going to hit on the 3 and highlight there. Our weather and risk mitigation, CloudFire, they are well underway. They have everything they need to help support us and help get us in zones where we don't have to do our entire service territory should we get into a high-risk PPS event. We're also reviewing some grid monitoring technology. Doing a technical review. I'm hoping to share that at our next board meeting as a workshop. There's some good things happening out there. I'd mentioned previously that there's a lot of technology efforts helping utilities to mitigate wildfires. This is one that I think is of interest for us. We're also doing a dry run on the patrols, so for PPS. So you may recall when we went through the SOP, our standing operating procedure, that we talked about doing 100% patrol of our entire service territory or those sections of line that we do have to de-energize. We are testing this. We're identifying the locations that we need to isolate and identify exactly how long it's going to take to do each circuit. That way we can give a very, I should say, an accurate information to our customers when they'll be restored, should we have to do that. That's the end of my report. I appreciate the opportunity.
Good evening, President Finn and members of the board. So I'm going to start off with the graph that we are also used to. And again, this is regarding the conservational way of life, what we have coming up. So on January 1st of 2026, we'll have some reporting that we start doing, and it becomes effective in January 1 of 2027. So currently, if I compare the month of June to June, we're 1% down. If I do the running 3-month average of the last 3 months for 24 versus 25, we're 3% down, which is good. We need to keep going that direction because we believe the goals that they're going to have for us are very aggressive, so to say, and so we're going to need to keep doing something to this practice. Since we're 6 months of the way through, though, I also ran some other statistics of, or some other numbers rather, with regards to how are we tracking for the entire year. If we were to compare 24 to that of 25, we're tracking just under 1%. So if you recall, when we did a presentation on California Conservation Way of Life, 1% is going to be that target that we're going to have to hit if we're above our goal. So each year over year, we're going to have to reduce by that of 1%. So I also bring up something else because we have the budget going on. And so the very first thing, and I know there's a bunch of words up there, but I just kind of want to bring your attention to the far right column where the percentages are. And if we were to, these are the metrics that we're tracking for just our distribution guys. Again, this is just one aspect of the water department. And if we look at that, we'd say, well, the USA's, our underground service alerts, are down, so this is good, we should have plenty of labor. But when we start going down further, we start seeing that almost everything is up. And so we haven't increased staff numbers, but we're increasing production. So a lot of times people say, well, how is that possible? You know, what are you guys doing differently? And I really think I want to call out the people that are doing those jobs, the servicemen that are out there working in these fields. They're doing an amazing job. We never know exactly how many leaks we're going to have. We never know a lot of these things. So to see that we're up by well over 100% on several of these, just for principle of math, so to say, I'm comparing January to June on both columns. And then I have the total there so that you kind of see where they probably will end up. Let's step over into the capital improvement projects. So this is 6170A, the tank. They finished blasting it earlier this week. They then did the very first coat on Tuesday of this week. Then they went back through and striped it or lined it, and they're planning on doing the finish coat of the roof on Tuesday of this next week. So they're well on target to be done with it this summer. Hopefully they get to everything before temperatures would change too much, but we're very excited with how things are progressing over there at 6170. Sierra Meadows, for the customers that are over in that area, we've nearly completed 2 of the 3 segments. They're going to be doing some asphalt coming up this next week and moving on to that final segment of pipe. Again, they're on budget and on time to finish this summer, and hopefully not or minimally impacting the customers. Obviously they are, so we appreciate your patience if you live over in that area. Capital improvement projects. So I threw up the graphic up there just for the reason of saying these are kind of the steps that we go through. So the very first thing that we do is we're reviewing and updating the plan, going through it. We then talked about some of the prioritization 2 meetings ago, excuse me. And then we moved on to the budget. And I said that earlier, something about budget. Well, this is a big component of the budget is our capital improvement. So we're planning on bringing this to you in September, one of the September meetings. And we're excited to present the findings. We're just wanting to rerun through things one more time before bringing it forth to the board. Tahoe Donner, for those who are up in Tahoe Donner, we are finished asphalting over on Northwoods, and we appreciate your patience up there also to the customers. The project was, we're very happy with the way it went, and again, we apologize for any inconvenience. However, you want new pipes, trust me, and we know this is one of the things that we need to do. So we're done with asphalting. There's a few items left on the punch list, and we plan on bringing that to you most likely next meeting for the closeout of that project. Ski run tank, as you can see, the tank is gone, the asphalt is done. We have 1 or 2 punch list items, and again, this should be coming to you next month with regards to the closeout and fully operable. We're very happy at this point with where things are. Thank you.
Good evening, President Finn, members of the board. Stephen Poncelet with Public Information and Strategic Affairs. On the PIO side of the house, we've been busy putting out press releases, wildfire season, your money at work, our board recap, and then most recently Charging Futures Forward, which really talks about all the activities we do engaging with the schools and kind of growing our own. Sierra Sun has picked them all up, but they did put the recap in print most recently, so it's nice to see them featuring us in the print as well. And then we have our ongoing water campaign, really educating, raising awareness now, but working towards understanding the infrastructure and the people that are needed to run a water utility, and then how that flows into rates, which will be coming later this year. So it's water resources, infrastructure, water quality, service reliability and safety, and local watershed stewardship are the 2 board initiatives that really inform that activity. We did put together some infographics that are really the first part of it, where we're raising awareness of the resources and what it is, and we'll then go into what it takes and what it costs. The one on the left really talks about our water resources, and the one on the right talks about our water infrastructure. And so you'll start to see that a lot of interesting work, factoids, details went into the development of these, and we'll use them as the launching pad for the future communications and education that are to come. On the strategic affairs side, we did reach out to the commenters at the public hearing for the Martis Valley Groundwater Management Plan. We shared all the comments we received with our consultants and then met with them and the GMP partners. We made to the edits to the process and notification requests that they had requested and the board agreed with, but not the other statements of fact they wanted changed in our licensed California Registered Hydrogeologist report, and then expanding the scope of the GMP. And we are working on setting up a meeting with them to go over the changes and discuss why we did or didn't respond to their comments. And then continued local engagement. I attended the Chamber Government Affairs Committee. Senator Marie Alvarado Gil was in attendance. That's her speaking to the crew. We did the Tahoe Donner Annual Meeting Expo. And we had a booth there like we do every year. And then, like Director Morrell talked about, the general manager gave a presentation to the Tahoe Donner board. And we really focused on some history because there's new people in the room, but really our projects directly impacting Tahoe Donner, and then wildfire because we're in the middle of season. You know, we're doing our covered conductor and metal poles and crossarm and ceramic crossarms project up there, and really bringing them up to speed on why and the benefits and what we hope to achieve with those. And then with regards to the scholarship program, a couple meetings ago, we talked about the awardees for the college-bound seniors. They did do their process for the vocational and certification type scholarships. Very happy to announce that we did get one very qualified applicant for lineman school, and that's him there, Pablo Guerrero. We did not get any applicants that qualified for the degrees and certifications and licenses that are part of that workforce and vocational. So staff's going to circle back with the Community Foundation staff. We're going to look at the whole year. I think we had a generally very successful first year, but we have things to learn and opportunities to improve, and we'll be doing that going forward. And that's it. Thank you.
Good evening, President Finn, members of the board. I'm Scott Crow, IT Director CIO for the IT Information Technology update. So the district, like other public agencies here in the Tahoe Truckee area, experience issues with radio signals in their digital radios. So we're no different. The digital radios are a direct line of sight type of communication. So if there's anything going on between the tower and the handheld, you're going to experience some issues. I put down some things here that could potentially affect radio communication. It's not all, but some of the things that make sense. Distance to transmitter, the further a signal gets away from the transmitter, the more opportunities there are for issues. Interference would be with other electronic equipment, other types of signals. Antenna issues would be things like the material of the antenna, or we've experienced in the past, the cabling that connects the antenna back to the nodes, sometimes gets water in it, things like that. Equipment issues, radios can have equipment issues. The back-end servers, things like that can have an effect on radio signals. The things in red here are the things that we experience in this area that really affect our coverage, right? So like weather, snow, rain, thunderstorms, lightning, fog, that kind of stuff. Clearly, snow is our big problem. Obstacles, mountains, elevation changes. We know how many different elevation changes just in Truckee alone here. Dense vegetation, pine trees. You combine pine trees with snow, it's a signal killer, right? So buildings and walls, we don't really experience that. But those red things are really the big things that we deal with here. So over the past year and a half, IT staff have been working with the field crews to see if there are ways that we could try to improve radio signal where we can. So some recent updates to our system. Last year, IT staff completed a coverage survey. And what that does is it gives us a heat map to kind of show us where we can experience poor coverage, good coverage, and such. At the top there in the top right, let's see if this thing works. This picture here is a representation of what a heat map might look like, right? So green is going to be good signal or excellent signal. Yellow, as you get away, you're starting to get less and less. I mean, that's still great signal. Orange, red start becoming non-workable. So we performed that over about a year ago, and we used that information to kind of work on some solutions, some other solutions. Turns out that we actually have pretty good coverage here in Truckee. There are 4 smaller areas around town that experience some issues. What that means is on the perfect day, a clear day, everything's good. You're going to get you're going to get a signal, but something could happen. When it starts snowing or other things like that, we're going to experience some issues. One of the things that we've recently, within the last 3 months, we have, for lack of a better word, we have 3 towers around Truckee that we utilize for our radios, right? They're placed in higher elevations for the direct line of sight. And so about 3 months ago, staff went through and did a tune-up of those radio sites to make sure everything is working within working specifications, did tune-ups to make sure that those sites are doing well. Last month, staff completed a large infrastructure upgrade, which included the back-end servers. They were older. The software that actually runs the system was upgraded. And then all of the handheld radios have new firmware updates on them. And they also went through a tune-up as well, where they were tested to make sure they're running in their proper operating specifications. So the future updates for this are the head units that are at the substations. There's 4 of those. We're in progress of actually updating those. And what those are going to do is we're going to update them so they can connect back to our system via our fiber backbone, as opposed to using antennas that are at the sites, the substations. We have problems with those antennas because of the electric current that goes through the wires and whatnot. So we're going to take that out of the picture. And then with the infrastructure upgrade, what that's allowed us to do is work on this thing, the second bullet, which is communication modality. What that does is it allows the radio to choose the communication that best fits for the area that they're at. So if the radio isn't working, it can choose to go to cellular. It also can choose to go to Wi-Fi if we have the ability to connect up to our Wi-Fi. So we're going to be testing that out to see if that's going to do anything for our radios. And then future testing would be if it gives us the ability to put equipment inside of the vehicle, so when they're out in the field, they can essentially be a hotspot to allow the radio to connect to the vehicle via Wi-Fi. That's our network, and then we can transfer that data back to our infrastructure and make that communication that way. So that is a potential future testing. So that's the update I have. Thank you.
I just have a quick question. Where are the 3 tower nodes? Where are they? Are they close or?
They're in the area. I don't have the exact locations,
okay.
but they're one's on a big tower. The other one's on one of our tanks. We've tried to locate them in an area what gives us the best line of sight. The original design of this DMR system, which was years and years ago, had a 4 sites. We never did the 4th site. So anyway, yeah.
I find them extremely helpful. I know our other directors do as well. That brings us to consent calendar. Do we have any public comment on the consent calendar this evening? No? Seeing none? Do we have any board questions, comments, or needs about the consent today?
Moving forward, when we're going out to bid, I would like to see the other bids. In the report, it states, we accepted the low bid from XYZ at, umpteen dollars, but it doesn't show who the other bidders were. And I think in terms of, for the public, it would be good that they see who else is bidding and what the pricing is. I also think that it gives us a gauge point if that's a realistic bid sometime. So just moving forward, I would like to see all the bids listed and where they came from.
Thank you, Director Randall. Do we have a motion?
I'll move the consent calendar.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, the motion passes. That brings us to item number 14, the first of our action items this evening, and that is our 2025 mid-year financial update, and we have Mr. Salmon with a presentation for us.
Good evening, President Finn, members of the board. Action item number 14, mid-year 2025 financial review. All right. So the current year's budget that we're operating in was approved on November 1st, 2023 by the Board of Directors for 2024 and 2025. We had 2 reviews of 2024, and this is the first review, the mid-year review of 2025. And then we'll have one more in March of 2026, is the plan, and that's in accordance with district code. It's important to understand that budget reports and budget analysis is not traditional, straightforward, fully GAAP financial statements. There's some nuances. I'll point out a few here. The primary ones, budget typically, and this is true with pretty much the majority of government agencies and government budgets, not all, but the majority budget more on the cash flow, and that's why I'm going to cover this. So the budget kind of excludes depreciation because we include capital expenditures. It also excludes things like a pension actuarial valuation, which can vary widely from year to year. So that's not a budgeted item. That's a non-cash adjustment to the year-end financial statements on the GAAP financial statements. The budget includes capital expenditures. It includes debt service payments, principal and interest, The interest is charged to expense, and then the principal draws down the liability. And then, of course, there's transfers in and out, which are simply a movement in a bucket of cash between one type of cash to another type of cash. So, I'm going to be covering a lot of forecast information for 2025, and that's as of right about now or a week ago. It's not, and it will vary by the time we're at the end of the year, one way or another, hopefully favorable. And kind of going through this and talking through it with a few folks, I just wanted to cover, quickly do some background information on types of transactions and how they affect the financial statements of the district. So this is almost an accounting 101 at a district level, but I think these are important fundamental things for all of us to refresh ourselves on. And so I want to cover them very briefly here. I'm going to go through each line on this page and kind of just talk through the nuances. All right? And these are hypothetical example figures. They're not exact. Obviously, we have more than $3 million in revenue, both for water and electric for the year, but these are just examples. So when we bill revenue, that's a revenue on the operating statement, a positive, and then for cash, when we collect that revenue, it posts to our cash, and that increases our net position over here on the far right by $3 million. So that's the three pieces of the equation that are impacted when we bill our customers. The next line, as an example, we spend $2 million a year in vegetation management, right? And that's an expense. And so that's a negative on the operating activity. The P&L, also it's called an income statement. And it reduces cash because we pay that vendor. And then that also lowers our net position or our equity, okay? When we do a transfer, for example, $1 million from operating reserve to capital reserve, you notice there's no dollar amounts presented here because that's just between one cash bucket to another cash bucket. So there's no financial impact at a top level. It's a designation or restricted cash movement, depending on the nature of the transaction. In this case, it would be designated reserves. And we'll cover reserves in a little bit. There's no net impact on the financial statements themselves. When we incur capital expenditures, obviously there's the cash flow, in this example, $1 million. And then the offset for that is fixed assets. So you're adding to your assets. The net impact to equity is zero. You just move from one cash type to another cash. I'm sorry, one asset type to another asset type. You move from cash to fixed assets. When we depreciate that asset, you do that over time. So if that was a 10-year life asset, there would be $100 of expense in the depreciation expense, which again is non-cash. And that would reduce your net fixed assets, and it would also reduce your equity, your net position. Moving on to debt scenarios. Important to understand this area as well. When we issue debt, let's say it's $14 million like we did for water, the transaction puts cash in the bank of $14 million and adds a liability for that debt of $14 million. It does not affect net position or the P&L. Then when you invest the proceeds from that debt, that cash you invest, you outflow the cash paying your vendors, and then you increase your fixed assets. Again, no net position change there because you move from one asset type to another. The next line item is debt service payment, principal and interest. The interest gets charged to the income statement. The principal paid portion, just like your mortgage, there's a principal portion and an interest portion. The principal portion reduces the liability for that debt, and then the cash flow is obviously the total of the two. The interest is the only piece there that changes the net position. And then two more quick examples. From a pension standpoint, we just made a UAL payment, unfunded actuarial liability payment of $1.6 million in July. And so that was an expense and reduced cash because it was cash to CalPERS. And then that reduced our net position. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the actuarial valuation, That's typically done in the spring for year-end close. That is, let's say the liability by the actuary, our net pension liability went up by $500,000. That would reduce non-cash. It would be an expense of $500,000, reducing your net results on the operating statement, and it would increase your liabilities and decrease your net position. Anyway, a few accounting examples just to get the financial juices flowing for the evening. All right, any questions on that? All right. So diving in for the electric utility. The annual budget is $43 million in operating revenues, and the net activity after transfers and capital expenditures and other activities was budgeted to be just under $1 million at $878,000 positive. So that means we didn't budget break even. We budgeted a positive $878,000. We budgeted an anticipation of increasing our operating reserve by $878,000 for the year. Still forecasting that same thing. First, I'll cover the middle center column. These are percents of budget halfway through the year. Revenues are at 52%, so slightly ahead of half of the year. Purchase power is underrunning pretty significantly at 42%. Operating expenses are slightly under at 46%. And then investment income is close, but at 45%. Debt service is spot on. Capital expenditures are significantly under budget year to date. Construction season is just getting going through June. These are through June financials. And then net transfer activities. I'm going to cover the majority of these material line items in more detail here shortly. I am currently forecasting based on discussions with the team to still be in that same zone, but some of that's accomplished through the difference between capital expenditures and transfers. So I'll go through each of these items as we next. So on the top line, this is, as you know, one of my favorite charts. This is average billed KWH per account per month. The 2025 is the gray dots, and they're a little hard to see because they're spot in with the averages. Other than the red dots are 2023, where we had a big winter. July is on the bottom end, similar to June. I just looked at that this morning. Let's see. The other information's here, slightly down from the 3-year average, which includes that 2023 big year. Things are a lot less volatile typically. You never know, but things are a lot less volatile here in June, July, August, September. Then when we get into October, November, December, things in that fourth quarter can get volatile, as you can see in December with the blue dot at the top, due to weather primarily. As far as purchase power goes, for the first quarter, we were 2.5% more in megawatt hours, and then in the second quarter, down by 1.5 to budget. And then the 3-year average is on the far left. Taking out 2023, we're about 1.3% down to the 3-year average, looking at a 3-year average of 21, 22, and 24, skipping 2023, which was a big winter, down about 1.1. So revenues, as I mentioned, we're at 52% of budget. Forecasting to be at 97% for the year, so slightly under budget, 1.2 million, and that's because we're including the PCA. The PCA is a credit or a charge against, when they're credits, that's a charge against revenues, and so we're having less revenue because we have less purchase power cost. So a good thing overall. I don't usually say that when you're down in revenue, but in this case, it is a good thing. And then I'll point out that the year-to-date June average retail dollars per kWh is 0.2326 cents per kilowatt hour, which is up 7.6% to last year. And so that's the 12% rate increase on average, offset by the PCA credits, netting to an average increase year over year of 7.6. Moving on to operating expenses. This is our operating departments for the electric utilities portion. 16.7 million budget running at 46% overall, and that equates to about 600,000 favorable. But you got to think about, and I look at the timing in order to assess the forecast. I'm looking at things like the veg management I mentioned earlier. We're spending at $750,000 through June. Half of it would be at 1 million even, and so we're slightly behind because the summer months are much bigger. And so I've working through that, still forecasting us to be pretty much spot on to budget for the year. At this point, I don't know anything that's going to tell me anything much greater. Operations is currently underrunning a slight bit. Again, there's timing between months. We do have a rate of pay difference there, but we also have personnel changes and vacancies and things like that. So things are looking to be offsetting pretty much for a net zero overall, and specifically in that area. So things look good for operating expenses overall. Shifting gears to capital expenditures. The capital expenditure budget, again, approved in November of 2023. The budget of projects that we're going to be executed on and expend on in 2025 are listed in the first column. 9.7 million in typical electric system type projects, as well as battery storage. A portion of that was 1.5 million. And then we also had 11.2 in land and building expenditures planned in 2025. And as you know, through various reasons and various things going on, that has been delayed, so we're not spending that. And then there's IT and fleet as well. We are continuing to experience lead times. If we budget for a vehicle this year, we're lucky to get it in 2027, particularly specialty type equipment. So as you know, we're actively working on these capital projects, many of these capital projects. We're also actively working on the CIP plans for electric and water as part of the budget process, not only for 2026 and 2027, but updating the 10-year plan. So I do have a placeholder in for spending some of the debt proceeds on land and building this year, but whether that happens or not, we'll either have the cash or have land and building assets by end of year, one or the other, depending on how things play out. Let's see. So this is other activities. There's quite a bit of in and out. The positive numbers are a use of cash. These are your transfers in and out of cash reserves. So this is all cash reserves to balance. You had budgeted significant amount of capital expenditures. The actual is less, so you're not going to use as much reserves as what was budgeted. And that's essentially what this page is telling you. I am also estimating that because we're spending slightly less on overall capital expenditures, we can, I think, move more money into the capital reserve by about 800,000 and still achieve the 800,000 positive on the operating reserve side as well. So the net gain there is that we can gain a little bit on our capital reserve balance. What else is on this page? So to summarize, net budget activity is similar to budget and $640 actually different. But again, that's balanced by that adjusting the transfer amounts because we didn't spend as much as we needed in capital. So the net here, these are the main moving parts and pieces. In the center here, you'll see the negative revenues and the purchase power somewhat offsetting. And I just talked through the capital and I talked through the capital reserve in the second line there. So that is the net operating activity budget performance review for electric utility for the mid-year. Then again, that's the forecast for the full year. So moving into the key reserves of the electric utility, forecasting 2025 to end at 9 million, and the policy balance is 8.4, so, pretty close there. The policy balance is 50% of operating expenses. And, and that's slightly ahead of what was in budget. The next line is interesting. The green bar is what was in budget. And that's because we were going to use all that capital in 2025 and buy a building and land and do capital expenditures. We were going to spend 22.5, and we're not spending that level of funds, right? And so that green bar is not the forecasting at 14.1, not I think it was about 2 million. So, so we did not draw down those capital reserves. So our balance is forecasted to be 14.1, and that includes that 800,000 additional forecasted to come in. The policy balance would be 1 year's capital expenditures, and that'd be about 9.1 million on the current capital improvement plan. If you take out the building expenditures and the battery storage, right, that were delayed, that 14 million drops to 7. So below your policy level. Not great, but not horrible, but not where it needs to be either. Those are the two main projects that got delayed, were land and building and use of capital reserves there, and the battery storage. So those are all being reset with the current CIP that's being worked on. Okay. Vehicle reserves is built up a bit because of the delay, primarily due to the supply chain issues of deliveries, but they will get here, and those balances will draw down. And then the rate reserve is pretty close to the target balance. So all in all, even after that draw that we did, we've been able to bolster it, and we put a few over 150,000 in it last quarter with the PCA for Q1. So we've made some good progress on that draw in 2023. So anyway, getting close there. So with that, I will pause. Any questions about the electric utility, or you want me to cover water next?
I just have a question. When projects are delayed, is that money that's not being spent sitting in an interest account or something? I mean, or is it just money that's just rolled over? But is it making us money while we're not using it?
Yeah.
You know?
So it's on this page. It's
Okay.
in the capital reserve.
In the reserve, okay.
Is the short
So it's
answer.
accounted for, yeah.
And they are invested in U.S. Treasuries and LAIF and the new, a year and a half ago now, the class JPIA, Joint Powers Authority, California Special Districts Investment Authority, that's similar to LAIF. So we have it in several different investment vehicles. And when you look at their details, it's in U.S. Treasuries and, those type of
So they might be
investments.
delayed for a number of reasons, but in the end, that we're making money on our money, so
We
that's a
are.
bigger
That's
pot in
correct.
the end for
That's
that
correct.
project or other projects.
That's
Okay.
correct.
That's it.
Yep. And to the extent that project, we have these funds, so to the extent that project happens in the future, we don't have to increase rates to cover it because we have it here in reserves because we've already factored that. So it rolls. And it rolls, and it'll roll again, and yeah. So this water activities top-level budget, basically break-even net, 20 million, 20.5 million budget in operating revenues, 13.7 in expenses, nets to an operating income budget of 6.8. Then you have a little bit of investment income, and then you have debt service. I'll show that later for the whole for a long period of time, but essentially 2 million in debt service for water. And after those things, you're at $5 million. So that's a big part of what we're wrestling with right now, balancing the capital needs of water, and they may be greater than $5 million. So that's the beast we're trying to tackle at the moment. Capital expenditures are budgeted. We're budgeted for numerous projects that, and then transfers, which it's essentially use of reserves, the 2.9 million, nets to the 100,000 break even. Things are pacing pretty close to budget for the half of the year, a little under, but again, the seasonality of expenses, and as you know, the third quarter is big on volume of water, and for that top line there. And I'll cover capital expenditures, forecasting the year to be slightly better in net for the water utility. The billed water gallons per account per day is up 10% year-to-date through compared to 2024, and up 13% to the 3-year average. Q1 was flat at 0% change, and Q2 was up 24% to the 3-year average. So according to this data, it tells me that was a very, very dry second quarter, and it felt like it, if you look back. So, and then, as I mentioned, about 50% of our billed gallons each year are in the third quarter, July, August, September. So forecasting revenues to be right in line with budget. Operating expenses are at 46%, which for the water utility is about a 500,000 savings year to date. But again, timing of expenditures, there will be a lot more happening. That it's a little heavier in the summer months when some activities are happening. So still forecasting overall to be essentially on budget. At this point in time, I'm not seeing anything that is going to cause us to be dramatically plus or minus, materially plus or minus to budget for the water utility. Of course, we don't spend anything over budget general manager authority without getting board approval, as you know. So, capital is lighter than what was in budget, and these are the components. The current forecast is just under $5 million for 2025. This is after significantly more than that for 2 or 3 years. Feels like 10. But so a little bit light on the lighter side for the water utility in 2025. I know they're planning quite a bit, and obviously we're working on that capital improvement plan for the 10-year plan. There was in the budget, again, from 2 years ago for 2025, a pipeline expansion paid for through with facility fees of $1.2 million. That project is being reevaluated and will come out in the next capital improvement plan. And then we did spend facility fees of $177,000 to finish up the West River Street Bridge, which was partially funded by facility fees. And then we haven't spent any on vehicles, but we are getting 5 vehicles for water in this month. So Yahoo, finally getting some vehicle deliveries. And then transfers in and out, there's the facility fees nuance. Capital reserve use is not necessary because we're spending less than budget. And then that allows us to provide more funding because we're spending less as well. So that's that negative $1 million on the bottom right is a favorable variance because we're going to put more into the capital reserve, and water needs that. And so that's in essence shown on this page of net summarization of results for the water utility. Net 1.1 on rates, over 1 million under in capital expenditures for this year for the rates portion, so we can put $1 million back into capital reserves, and the rest are benign variances. As far as reserves for water, They'll be at, forecasted to be at 7.1 million at the end of the year. 6.9 would be the policy target, 50% of operating expenses per district code. And then the capital reserve balance is forecast, including that $1 million transfer, will, because less was spent this year, would be 5.7 million. And then the policy balance would be 8.2. And we've talked about that. We talked about it last budget cycle. We'll be talking about that balance this budget cycle as well. Debt service, the blue bars are water's debt service. That's right at 2 million out through 2034. The arrow there is 2025. You can then there's 2015 COPs drop off, and then 2036 thereafter is essentially the 22 CIPs are right at 1 million. And then the orange bars are the electric debt issuance in 2022. And then accounts receivable, 90 days past due is the common metric to look at as far as seriously delinquent accounts. And that this goes back to 2019, June and year end since 2019. You can see COVID. And then on the far right there is June of 2025 at $29,000. So not quite at pre-COVID levels, but still pretty less. That 29,000 is about 39, I believe it's 39 electric accounts and 30 water accounts. Less than 0.04% of our customers. Fiscal impact, this financial review of actual to budget activity and year-end projections for fiscal year 2025, Service Board's review of the district's current financial performance. And the recommendation is to accept and direct staff to file the 2025 mid-year financial update. And with that, I'll turn it back over to President Finn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salmon. Do we have any public comment on this presentation? No. Do we have any directors' comments or questions at this moment? Okay, there's a lot of negative. Okay, great. I do have one question.
No, I was just going to say thanks, Mike,
Yeah.
for the great information. Presenting it in a fashion that we understand.
Yeah, you're getting very good at breaking it down for us.
Yes. So, thank you.
Thank you. I do have one question about, it was on the first slide of the water presentation where our billable gallons were up like 13%, and our production is down 1% according to our department update. Is that, the difference in that is leaks plugged? Like what is, how is that what happens there? Anyone can answer, it's all good. It's just.
Great question for Chad.
Teamwork makes the mic work, apparently. With regards to your question, President Finn, yes. So we're thinking that it has to do when we're seeing the billing going up but production going down. We're hoping that that is going after the leaks, that we're catching more of the water through the meters than what historically might have got through those meters. So we will do an audit later this year with regards to the state and see where are we potentially losing water. We also are auditing meters right now, going through and continuing to check to make sure. But that's actually a really good statistic that we're seeing, that we're not. We've seen numbers as high in the mid 20% loss. We're not seeing that, obviously, but I can't give you the exact number until we do that audit later this year.
Yeah, thank you. When I first saw that, it makes sense. I had to think a little bit, and thanks for helping me understand that
Yes, ma'am.
better. Okay, well, in which case, do we have a motion?
I'll move Mr. Salmon's recommendation.
I'll second.
Awesome. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? No nays. Motion passes. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that rolls us into action item number 15, our purchase power review for fiscal year 2024. So last year's numbers are all going to be spread out here. And here we have Jared. Mr. Carpenter is up with the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, President Finn, members of the board. My name is Jared Carpenter. So this is the annual purchase power review. We do this every year to give an update to the board. Okay, so a little executive summary, just so we can keep our heads on straight here. 22 and 23 prices were very volatile those couple of years. In 2024, the prices stabilized a decent amount. Red Mesa's solar line came online in 2024. I wrote that, I kind of realized it's not exactly accurate. It came online in 2023, but 2024 was the first full year. So in my mind, it was the first full year to track things, but maybe I should word that differently. Our renewable power supply our renewable power supply from hydro and from biomass reduced compared to other years. While we met all regulatory compliance marks, there will be some challenges in 2025 for 2024. UAMPS, they began exploring methods of restructuring to ensure future member support, meaning there's a lot of changes coming. We'll get into a few of them and kind of see what they're looking at. And the future challenges, right now I'd kind of summarize it as saying, the biggest one is sort of having the right amount of resources for the right time of day and season, and of course at what cost. So we'll get into some details. So for starters, go through some key terms. More and more of these will become popular as time goes forward, so I want to give you some ideas of what they are now. So UAMPS and NCPA, real simply, as a utility, you have generation, and you have to take the generation and you have to bid it and sell it and supply it. Also get your loads put into your balancing authority. UAMPS does that for us. So they're ensuring our power supplies are forecasted, we're telling them information, and then ensuring it's going into the grids that we're connected to. So generation and scheduling. Another big piece, of course, is regulatory compliancy and just regulatory stuff in general. And because we're in California, that's who NCPA is a partner there helping us. So our two big partners, of course, UAMPS and NCPA are critical to our success. For market, we call that from the power world. Those are things that are not from generators we have a contract with or we own or anything like that. It's a market purchase. It's often the undefined power. You don't know where it came from in most cases, but it's what you're buying from the overall markets. And that can be in the spot market in the last minute where we're exposed. It could even be a long-term contract. We're going to buy X amount of megawatt hours per month for the next 5 years. So it could be short-term down to the minutes. It can be longer term. Peak and off-peak, those things do shift. The one thing I want to call out in here is making sure we're all understanding that times make a big difference. Time of day for power makes a big difference, more than a little bit. But there's peak and off-peak power periods and even like low load and high load hour periods when you're buying energy. Prices are always changing. Renewable energy credits, just to be real clear, my analogy I always use for that one is if you put a solar array on your house, for example, or on this building, whatever you want to think about, it very basically puts out two products. One, electricity that turns your lights on, light bulb is on, and two, a piece of paper saying it was renewable. If you don't do something with a piece of paper, retire it, sell it, do something with it, it was just undisclosed power. It wasn't solar power, it was just power. So the credit is what allows it to be called something specific. Energy versus demand. Energy is the kilowatt hours you use across the entire month. The demand is the peak you used, the absolute peak you used. One way of thinking that is like imagine if you had I guess here in truck example could be like if you drove rode your bike to work. Well, if it's a flat ride, it's all very easy. If you have a hill, well, you better be able to climb the hill with the power. The hill is like the peak demand. The overall miles to the destination, that's like your energy. Demand is very important, and demand is very unstable prices, unstable things like prices and building and planning and all that kind of stuff. We'll get more into that too. Transmission, for our case, and next one down covers it too a little bit. PacifiCorp, PACE, and NV Energy, those are our transmission providers. Most of our generation assets, actually not most, all of our generation assets essentially, are located in PacifiCorp territory. So every time they're generating and we have to do something with it, we have to pay to get it out of their transmission lines into NV Energy's territory, then up to Truckee. So we're paying transmission on a couple levels there. But transmission starts at 69,000 volts. When we talk about 120 volts in your house, that's not transmission. Anything above 69,000 up is transmission. Below that, 12,000 volts in the lines or not, that's all distribution, but that's transmission. Base load versus intermittent. This is one that's, I'll show you a slide later to make sure we're being very clear with this. This is different than most people thought it was, let's say 3, 4, 5 years ago. What turns on first are what's most efficient in the grid. So if you have a solar array or wind array, they run. They run. The gas plants are what go up and down all day long constantly because they can. So if you'll see the graph a little bit later, if one looks flat, that's like your wind. It's base. If your gas is going up and down constantly, well, that's intermittent. It's always changing. You'll see a slide in minutes, but that happens all day, every day. So that was not the case a number of years ago. That is absolutely the case today. The IRP, the Integrated Resources Plan. So back in 2023, the district took on doing an Integrated Resources Plan. That's basically a way of forecasting and planning a general idea of how we're going to meet all these energy needs and these resource requirements, what we're going to invest for and plan in, and how we're going to comply with the laws and the rules. It's for us, we use like a benchmark to ensure we're kind of in the ballpark of what we planned. So that's what that is. The energy imbalance market, simply put, we're not going to spend a lot of time tonight getting into the markets because there's a lot of them and it's quite complex, take too much time. But the energy imbalance market is essentially the entire thing when a power is being generated to keep the lights on. It's all a financial transaction today. It's just financial, except for about the last 5 minutes. Then it becomes physical. There's a market to turn things on and off to ensure you're meeting your physical needs for your power to be on in your utility, for all the customer base. That is settled in the energy imbalance market. That's been ongoing for a number of years, and I'm not actually sure what's going to happen about a year from today with it, because the extended day ahead market, the EDAM market, is coming online. It's an expansion of the EIM market. So that's one of the volatility or changes coming in the future. Volatility may be too strong of a word right now, but these are changes coming. There's a new market coming online. It's coming online 1 year from today. Next year's presentation, EDAM will probably be a discussion. And where it gets a little complicated there is PacifiCorp has joined the EDAM market, NV Energy has not. I don't actually know which they're going to join yet. There's other ones they can choose from, but PacifiCorp is in EDAM. That will change our pricing 1 year from today when they start engaging those markets. Resource adequacy, that is ensuring, as a balancing authority, as utilities, the balancing authorities are ensuring that we as utility have adequate resources to provide power to our customers. Resource adequacy. Resource sufficiency evaluation, RSE, that's similar to resource adequacy, except they're saying it's a much faster time frame and expanding across the West. So basically, it's ensuring that each balancing authority, NV Energy, CAISO, the PacifiCorp, the balancing authorities that we report to, really across the entire West. EDM is going across the entire West. That's not just California anymore, it's the whole West. They have enough resources to meet our own needs as utility and their own needs as a balancing authority before participating in those broader markets. So they want to make sure there is enough generation and not just relying on a market, or you better hope there's enough in the market. If there's not, you have a problem. Like a rolling blackout would be one of the worst case scenarios. Those are becoming much more critical. As we all hear about challenges of building things in the nation today, well, this is where we're trying to force the hand of building more generation. We better figure it out because the markets won't be sufficient. There won't be enough things in the market to meet the need. So that's resource efficiency evaluation. Transmission and planning, one of the hurdles today is if you want to bring on a new load, you want to bring in a big data center online, some big project, whatever it might be, or you want to put a big solar array online, or you want to build a power plant, getting these systems to either as a load or generation to work with the transmission grid in a way that works effectively takes a lot of planning. So adding a gigantic load means everything around it is incorporated. You heard tonight, and as you've heard many times too, a power outage in NV Energy's territory can sometimes turn us off. We had nothing to do with anything. All of a sudden, lights went off. That could be a variety of things, but that's where they're all connected. They're all connected. So the transmission and planning takes time. And nowadays, it takes more time than ever because we're taking big generators offline, replacing them with many more small generators. Just takes more time. Just do all the study processes. Okay, so before we go into this, I want to say this for the monthly update for this part of the presentation. So basically, when you look at 2024, we'll give a reminder of what happened last month, make it easier for 2024, at least in my mind. So 65% of the power sources for June 2025, I guess now 2 months ago, they came from renewable resources. That's the green pie chart in the lower left. Veo, as you heard in the last couple of months, it's been offline just due to some unplanned maintenance. It's getting close to being put back together, so it should generate again soon. But because it's been offline, that's why we're buying a little more carbon-based generation, because we have to replace it with like market prices basically, because it's all short-term stuff, just a few months at a time. So, but as you can see, we're still doing quite well with the renewables versus carbon-based for June. I added a new chart over to the bottom right there, and that's our coincidental peak versus our actual peak. So simply put, when we're paying transmission costs to get power delivered, we'll use just NV Energy at this point in time, from NV Energy to Truckee, what we pay is our peak at their coincidental peak. So on that chart, the orange line, this is months back to January 2024. What we're paying is the orange line. What we actually used is the blue line. So there's a big difference there. But we're paying for the orange line because it's our peak coincidental with their peak. So if we were to hit 10 right now, and they were at 100, we're only going to pay at their coincidence. So let's say their coincidental peak was 200, and we were at 12. We pay the 12. It's coincidental. It's not the whole peak. We design and build, of course, for our full peak to supply our customers with power, but we pay at the coincidental peak of NV Energy. So in many ways, if you could like shed your coincidental peak, if you knew when they're going to peak next month, exactly what time, within about an hour, and you shed all your load to zero for 1 hour and 1 minute, your transmission bill would be $0. Well, not quite zero, but next to $0. So there's ways to optimize these challenges going forward and reduce our costs. So I'm hoping to show that more consistently to the board in our monthly updates. It kind of shows you how much power we're really using too, and you can see like, what times of months we use it to. We peak in December and January. All right, so we'll get a little more now into 2024. So we'll touch a little bit on 22 and 23. So again, those big price spikes in December 22 and January 23, they're mostly due to our market exposure. So in December 2022, we were 26% exposed to the market, 47% exposed in January. So we had to fill those in at market prices, and the market happened to be sky high in that moment for a variety of reasons that we talked about many times. So that cost us a lot of money. Since then, the market prices have remained high in the peak months, but lower in the off-peak months. So for transmission cost, PacifiCorp did have a 42% transmission cost increase last year. So we are seeing the effects of transmission costs going up. NVs will come soon too. We're working on that and seeing what it's going to be. But they're already coming and hitting us and increasing our costs. Again, projects being delayed. So when you see high market prices, a lot of times it's because, for lack of better words, there's not enough generation. So the generators that are running, supply demand. They cost more to run, to power you, and you're paying more. If it takes a long time to study and plan to build a new generator, well, that's why the costs keep going up. So these long study periods delaying projects they are hitting us financially in every utility. So that's why those costs are important. So one thing we did differently, and you see the graph below there in FY24, so we came in about 10% below budget, $1.5 million that we saved, that we gave back to the power cost adjustment charge. The majority way we did that was we changed a little bit how we were buying power. So for lack of better words, we shopped more. If we saw months where power was really cheap in the markets, we might choose to leave ourselves exposed because it's so cheap. In the months where it goes sky high, what we're forecasting, we might button those up a little bit and remain less exposed. By doing many, many more purchases consistently, it has been working. No guarantees always works, but it has been working thus far. So that's where those savings have reflected so far, which has been nice. Oh, and also, we're also, a little more on this a little bit later, we're just as green. So we're buying from market, but we're doing it in a very strategic way and buying green resources where we can to ensure we're actually greener than we were at less cost. This is I remember a while back there, we talked about, I've heard meatloaf chart, lasagna chart, different names for it. Those names are hard for me to even understand, but so I'll show you a little more why that is in a second. So here's 2023. This is our monthly use, 12 months, and the orange line, the straight line you see, that's our actual kilowatt hours, megawatt hours of load, and then the bars are the generation sources to meet that load. The top light gray stuff, those are all market purchases, our exposure. So you see January 2023, the first one, that high exposure, and market prices happen to go high, well, there's your problem. And you look at that one too, you see that big orange one moving across there pretty consistently. That's Horse Butte wind. If you look at the yellow hatched one, kind of up top below the gray, that is Nebo gas plant. So you see, some months it's doing a lot, some months it's doing next to nothing. That's why I say that's more intermittent than the big orange wind farm. 2024, one more I should show you thing here is, also, when you see the orange line, that solid line where it's below the peak, because there is an hourly component, if we have too much power at noon, but not enough power at midnight, you're buying from the market at midnight, but you're actually, when you have too much power in your generation, you're selling into the markets. So we're selling our excess, not just losing it, we sell it. So sometimes across the month, we have, you look at all the hours, you've actually sold some of it. In 2024, we buttoned a lot of that up and we did less sales. We also were closer to our peaks, as you can see there, and we had more resources. So that's one of the reasons we were able to get some of those costs to be advantageous. Again, it may not stay that way, but it worked in 2024. But the reality is, I only have one slide in this. You really should think about it in hours, you being all of us, hours. So I grabbed one particular day, no rhyme or reason. I took 12/31/2023. There's no reason. We're peaking in December, so it's good to look at for us, but whatever. Actually, I took that because that was our peak day of the year in 2023, as I'm remembering that now. But what you see there is those are resources, same as the previous chart, of every hour of the day, and the blue is our actual load. What would be exposed there is the marketplaces, that's what would fill in the rest of that in. As you see, there's certain hours a day we are looking quite comfortable and close to our load, so we're buying very little from the market. But come the evening time, of course, that's not the case. If you look at the flat in the middle, you see that light blue one, that's Red Mesa Solar. It only runs during the day, obviously, and bad time to look at it. December, of course, is not a good time for solar, but good day to look at anyways. So you see, it's the hourly is key. And if the cost is substantially more at nighttime for energy and the market prices versus the middle of the day, which it is, you don't want high exposure at nighttime versus the middle of the day. So balancing that by hours is critical. Where this is going to really take off is that's what EDAM and EIM are all about. It's this hourly and those final last purchases, not the monthly or even yearly. It's those hourly ones. So that's becoming more and more of a thing. And by the way, the very bottom one, that candy cane one looking kind of one, that's Transjordan. That's a biomass facility. Great one. It's renewable, biogas, running flat, beautiful one. Wish we could find more of those. There's not a lot of them out there. We're fortunate to have one, basically, at this point. So where did our generation come from to keep the lights on? Pleasant Valley Wind, it ran, as a wind farm, it ran well. Transjordan Biomass, it ran well. Red Mesa Solar, it ran all 24, it came on 2023, there's a note there for that. Stampede Hydro, it ran well. That was nice to see because hydro doesn't always run well, but it ran great. Nebo Natural Gas Plant ran well. Horse Butte, it's good, that's wind farm, ran well. Vail, it ran less than expected. This is not the same thing, this is last year, but there was a couple reasons there. One of them was there was some maintenance on the, it's a gas plant, it's a gas line running about 1,300 miles, and it's taking the waste heat at these, you gotta lift the pressure up to the gas every couple hundred miles, whatever, because it's starting to lose pressure. You gotta boost it. To boost it takes a lot of energy, which creates a lot of heat. Vail grabs that waste heat and turns it into electricity. So it's non-carbon emitting, but if the gas plant downstream were to turn off, if the gas wasn't flowing, well, it wouldn't do anything. So Vail had some stuff downstream happen to it that ran less than expected. This year it's having some maintenance issues, so it's not running much right now because there's some turbine things that I talked to you about last board meeting. Fallon Small Hydro, that contract expired in January 2024, so we didn't take any power from the Fallon Hydro Dam. WAPA Large Hydro, we get power from that. You guys have seen that in board meetings for many years now, for many, many years. But we transfer that energy because getting it wheeled out of the Central Valley part of California to where we are in California is complicated. We are working on a way of doing it. We're working with WAPA on that. We'll see how long it takes us to figure it out, but it's not easy. It's never been easy. We have never taken it. So then the rest, of course, the market prices. And as mentioned earlier, we engage in more short-term purchases, filling in gaps, shopping and filling in gaps. And those gaps are often, we're talking filling them in the hourly format, not even the monthly, but buying hours where we know it matches our budget well. In other words, it keeps us under budget. RECs, where did our renewable energy come from? So in this case, they came from everything I just talked to you about. Pleasant Valley Wind, Transjordan, Red Mesa, Stampede, Horse Butte. But never assume we're going to just keep those because we are always shopping for other sources and we might buy the energy straight from other sources. So 2024, it all came from there. 2025, we'll see. We may get it from other sources besides there. We'll get from there too. We might get more too. If the prices are right, why wouldn't we grab it? There are plenty of times you can buy it for less than the gas costs. What are we looking at for the future? Where we're kind of keeping ourselves engaged. Because again, as we've talked about previously in the past on the meetings, and IRP usually points out too, having a diverse portfolio of power supply is now critical. You have one plant and it goes down, you're buying all from the market, those prices are high, you're in trouble. So we diversified a number of years ago. But these are the ones we're continuing looking at. A lot of these won't happen, but hey, we're always looking at them. Horse Butte Phase 2, you guys have heard about that one for many years. That's running some transmission connection issues, unfortunately. So I wouldn't call it dead, but it doesn't look super promising at this point in time. Obviously, we want that to change. Zion Solar, yeah, that one's dead. Fremont Solar and Storage, it's extremely challenged. And I wrote this prior to some of the ITC rulings. It's probably dead now. We're looking at a couple of geothermal projects. They're challenged. They're just developers moving slow with those. I'm not sure why, nor would I. But geothermal is definitely going to keep growing in the portfolio of all utilities, which I think is just wonderful. But they're moving slow right now. And I get it. You got to drill a hole, do lots of testing. It's not straightforward. It's like not easy. California battery storage opportunities, there are agreements near completion. Now, that doesn't mean if we're coming to bring an agreement on battery storage project or any generator, of course, we're coming to the board for the vast majority of those. Anything larger, definitely, and long-term, definitely. But there are agreements moving on some of those, and we're looking at some California battery opportunities. When it comes to the RA, that's where you can have benefit there. And I'll throw in right now, the reason the market prices have actually stayed low, and we've been taking advantage of them, but the reason they're staying low is solar, absolutely, but also the batteries in California. California's added about 5,000 megawatts of batteries in the past 3 years. The effects are absolutely working. So time for us to put our hat in the ring of those where we can, but you want to buy the right decision of them, not the wrong ones. We are looking at gas to hydrogen plants. We're looking at some of those. Those are moving along quite well, actually. We're looking for the right opportunity that fits our portfolio well. Battery and Truckee, not dead. We did a bid. Numbers were great. Everything was actually great. But as you've heard, those technologies, they took exemption to our snow loading. So the ones that bid. So we've already found other ones that didn't bid for a reason, didn't know, it doesn't really matter why. And so figuring out how we can still incorporate that, we haven't given up. But you see the power of batteries because they can shift your load. Nothing changed, just shift the hours. You can buy for free, you can sell, and then discharge it for the high cost. There's a lot of value there if we can figure out how to get it done and find the right product for us. Also, demand response. Another common way of, again, if that graph of the coincidental peak I was showing earlier, the orange and the blue, well, just imagine if you knew the peak in one window, it's actually 15 minutes. If you could hit it for 15 minutes and lower your peak demand, well, your savings are instantaneous if you can get it right. So having a program that can respond to that is like having a generator. It's like turning your gas plant on to shed load from what comes into Truckee. Just don't do it with a gas plant, do it with technology. Millard County, the gas peaker plant, that's a peaker plant. We're not involved in that project. I bring that up because a lot of these projects, not all of them, but a lot of them are linked to UAMPS, and UAMPS is working on a gas plant for some of their members who need it for where they are. And I only bring that up because they're our partners, they're our friends, and they're putting their time towards lots of projects. It doesn't mean we're involved in all of them though. So, but their time is limited, so it's fine. Solar plus storage in Utah, a lot of these, I don't share the exact name for obvious reasons, but looking at some of those are looking pretty good, especially the ones that are dying up top. Finding other ones to replace them is good. There's some wind in Wyoming that we're looking at. Transmission in Wyoming is definitely challenged over there to connect to the lines. Projects are ongoing to fix that, but they can take a while to get going. The Power County gas project, that we talked about that a number of months ago, that's moving along fine, and it won't be done until at least 2031. I can't see how it would ever be done any faster than that, but it's moving along. And that's, again, how will it operate in the future? These intermittent things, up and down, that is the future for a long time. So it won't run like a baseload plant. I shouldn't say that, maybe it will, but it probably won't, because gas plants, they run them when they get paid the most. Why would you run them for free? Solar, on the other hand, it's up, it's running, there's no fuel, it's just gonna keep running. Wind, if it's blowing, just keep running. And then, of course, we are looking at some Nevada projects for solar plus storage. Those are always a little bit challenging because Nevada, their goal, California, ours is 60% renewable by 2030. Theirs is 50% by 2030. They started later, but we're merging, so that means they're building a lot of projects, meaning they need them for themselves. But we are absolutely hunting down those projects because we definitely want to avoid building anything that is not in our balancing authority, because we have to pay transmission costs to get it out of that balancing authority. So closer to home, the better. Quick heat check, because that chart that's from the IRP that we did, the Integrated Resources Plan, and kind of how are we doing from that plan completed in 2023. Pretty good. So we're still hunting down some of those projects that you see on there. Some of them, like Horse Butte Phase 2, when this thing was completed, it looked great. That changed, but we're looking at other ones. So we're not way off, but it's a challenge, but it's not bad. Finding the second bullet there, finding renewable energy projects that operate at night still remains a challenge for everybody. And if it helps, for a point of reference, over 95% of the projects being looked at in most of the West, definitely California, are solar plus storage. It'd be nice to see a bigger chunk of that go towards wind, like the offshore wind that could be coming down the road in a number of years out, California. Geothermal would be great, more hydros would be great, but you're not building more dams anytime soon, so your choices are slim. I'm sorry, the choices are thin for what you can choose from, but we have a hat in the ring on a lot of things. So let's talk a little financial stuff now, a little shift from some of the generation stuff. In 2022, the actual surpassed budget, Mike kind of just did a lot of this in CFO. The CFO did a bunch of this moments ago. Since 2022, the actual has been below budget. So the blue there is our actual, the orange is our budget. We have stayed low and returned that money back to our ratepayers through the PCA. So it's been working. But one thing I will call it, of course, is that big spike you see there, the blue line that we talked about earlier, December and January. Those weren't always peaking months. They certainly are now in terms of price. Summer's always kind of high, but that doesn't affect us as much. But we peak in the winter, and a peaking month is December and January. So that's a little more risky. So we work hard to try to mitigate that by staying on top of these things and make wise purchases when we can. So to look ahead, though, so this is a little thing of, it's more of a look in 2024, but showing the future a little bit. So that blue line all over the place, that's 2023. These are dollars. So as you can see, it's just volatile. 2024 was less volatile, and you see 25 are in there now, obviously forecasting the rest of it. We have things well under control right now, in my opinion. But you can see 26 and 27, we expect more volatility, partially due to EDAM and the RA and the RSE stuff I was mentioning earlier. But we are working very hard to mitigate the potential costs that the cost that will hit us from Pacific Core, because they're in EDAM. So we know there's going to be a change in cost, up or down. No one can forecast that exactly, but we're doing our very best to optimize it and bring those costs down. maybe even make them go negative, like the EIM has been negative for us sometimes. So that volatility, the goal is to make it less volatile and down, obviously. So, and again, MVPs, they're not part of EDM yet, so I don't do that just yet. This chart here, so since 2021, basically our energy costs are a mix of variable and fixed costs. So for example, if you own Red Mesa and it costs about your debt service payment, as Mike was talking earlier, if your debt service payment is $45 per megawatt hour, well, it's basically a flat cost. So here in this chart, and the rest of the day I'll come from a source we've been talking about, Transjordan, Vail, PV Wind, the ones we're talking about. If we remove all the fixed ones, they're kind of flat and cranking away, look at the variables, here's the variables. What are the variables? The market prices and NEPA natural gas plant. Those are going all over the place. So it brings up the question of how much risk do we want to absorb? That's a future challenge to talk about. We're working on some solutions, some ideas. And remember, whenever there's a risk and there's a problem, there's also an opportunity. So it's not all doom and gloom, it goes both ways. But if we don't want volatility, minimizing our exposure to market and even NEPA gas plant is how you reduce volatility. But you want to try to do that without having a high cost, obviously. So, question for the future. We'll get into that later on. Cap and trade. Very quickly, the way cap and trade works is as an electric utility, we are assigned an allotment of carbon credits that we can use to offset generation needs or sell them on markets. We're exploring a few different things we can do with them, but historically, we always sell them. In 2024, we did a few shifts of how the budget and the forecast that was done in 23 and 22 for cap and trade for 2024, it was very, very accurate. We just did a few different things differently, and it worked. So we came in, we received more revenue from cap and trade than budgeted, which is quite nice. It's always designed to get smaller and smaller because the market's designed to take carbon out of our grid in California. So it's always going to shrink. But if you can find the right time to move those credits you received or use them, you can turn that into revenue. So 2024 was good. Can't guarantee 25 will be just as good, but we try our best. Regulatory compliancy. So a little different than cap and trade, and that's actually a regulatory thing too. So those two charts there on the far right, there's one in the middle there too. So the one in the middle is our RPS. And so that's the renewable portfolio standard. So the years are 2011 down to 2030, and there's these periods and these targets to meet. So from 2011 until 2017, January 1st, the goal was 20% renewable. And then after that, it's gone up, 33, 44, 52, 60. So for us in 2025, the goal in the period of 2020, the goal in 2024 was 44%. Sorry about that. That says I've got a goal of 49% renewable in 2025. It should say 2024. So my apologies. Obviously, I don't know what 2025 is going to be yet. So error there, my fault. So the goal, the IRP had a goal for us of 49% for Truckee. The state kind of soft target to hit for 2024 was 44%. We came in about 56% of renewable. So it was good. If you look at the charts to the right there, the upper one is the RPS as it grows. So the blue line in the middle, that's the RPS target. The dotted line is kind of where our target to hit right now. It's part of the IRP. Now, given, of course, this goes up to 2040. Some of our investments are already not, like Horseshoe Phase 2 wind, are not panning out on the time we want them to yet. And some of them might even die, but we're looking for new ones. Right now, the point is we're looking pretty good for a long time. And we just try to keep it that way. It's getting better and better. The chart below that is the GHG requirements, the greenhouse gas requirements to report to the state. Those are in place legally, but the reporting doesn't start until 2031. And as you can see, the red line there versus the red solid line is what we have to meet. The red dotted is what the IRP is forecasting us to meet. We're not as much of a safety zone compared to the RPS. So we're working on trying to do better with that. But the nice thing is we had until 2031, so it's not like we're rushing now. We're planning ahead and building ahead and looking for contracts ahead to make sure it'll be nice and easy to comply when we get closer to 2031. So in other words, not a lot to worry about right now, a lot to be happy about what we see right here. The power source disclosure, the PSD, and the power content label, the PCL, that's different than the RPS. They look similar in many ways, but in this case, if you look at 2023, on the second from the left there, so we were at 47% renewable, and we had another 13% of that we matched to offset ourselves. So you could say we're 47% renewable, or you could also say we're 47% plus 13, making us 60% green. Couldn't call it renewable, call it green. So it's pretty good. Better, and then you look at what the state is on this side there to the right. We certainly were better than the average in the state. In 2024, we got up to 56% renewable, and another 25%, so you can call it that, 81% green. So yeah, we're looking good. Things are good. Not gonna get into these right now. I could be here all night talking about these, but the agencies we report things to, just as a heat check, is CARB, the California Air Resources Board, and the California Energy Commission, CEC, and those are the kind of things that we're reporting to them. And so like that, look at the bottom right there, the power content label, the PCL I was talking about, that goes to CEC. CARB does other things that we report to them, including, fourth bullet down, the use of cap and trade allowances. So we got that $500,000, $500 and something $1,000 there. What did we do with it? We have to report that to CARB. So this is a very brief summary of that. I can go a lot longer in each of these. There's a list of these things, and they're always growing. Okay, future challenges. EDAM. That is a new market coming online. It will be a bit of a challenge, especially since Pacific Core is in, PG&E is in, for example. So we're gonna keep working with that and try our best to use it to our advantage. And I think we can do that. We have some plans in place to hopefully use it to our advantage. Hopefully they'll work. It may not work for other utilities though, but it'll work for us if we're creative. The BESS, the battery, yeah, location's difficult. Maintenance is expensive for those things, but can reduce your risk, so important. Hourly generation, we talked a lot about that. I'll leave that alone, but finding the right generation source, meeting our hourly needs, important. For RECs, renewable energy credits, the cost, they actually decreased for many. They went sky high. Part of that's because the compliance period was ending, so there was a big demand for utilities to catch up. We didn't have the same need because we were already doing well. If a utility hadn't done well the previous year and they're trying to catch up across the period, they may have to overbuy in 2024 to overcome their deficiency in 2023, for example. We weren't there, but because of that, the prices did go up. The prices went down into 2024 and also 2025. But for Truckee, the prices for us to buy renewables, when we go shopping to bid for them, we have seen an increase in pricing year to year over the past 4 or 5 years. So mitigating that and buying at the right time and looking for the right generators, selling at a price that we like is key, which is why that shopping list, sometimes we're buying energy, sometimes we're buying just RECs, sometimes we're buying both from the same generator. It really depends. But that's how we take advantage of our pricing. Market prices have been down recently because of the solar and the storage I was mentioning and other reasons too, but let's not expect it to last. It's great, but let's not rest our laurels on it. One concern, of course, is at certain times of day, we do have exposure to a risk. That doesn't mean the lights won't be on in someone's house. That's not that. It's the cost. The exposure means we're buying at a high cost. We want to tighten those up during certain times. We want to loosen them up, wrong term for this, but it's the opposite, loosen them up in other times to take advantage of the market prices to the benefit of our customer. And of course, that all comes down to the same question of what level of risk do we want to absorb? That's something we'll come back to the board eventually, and we have a lot of conversations internally with UAMs, with NCPA, in trying to find just the right sweet spot for what we're doing. So, recommendation, accept and direct staff to file this report on the district's actual versus budgeted purchase power costs and energy consumption for 2024. And that's the presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Carpenter. I am, every time I think I'm on top of things, things turn upside down and I'm under them again. So I really appreciate all this, and some of it was kind of new information for me. So anyhow, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Do we have any public comments or questions on this particular presentation? No? Okay. Bringing it back to the board, do we have any comments or questions for Jared? I think we're all stunned. Yes.
Yeah, that was great. That was really full. My head's full. But I do have some questions. This EDAM market and this sort of hourly, this future way, I guess, and Pacificor is going that way, and NV Energy is not so far. Is there sort of a deadline that they have to decide when they do? Or is it something that they can opt into whenever? I mean, tell me about that.
Sure. So just for one step going back, one thing about California, there's a lot of folks who think what California has done are really bad ideas. The markets California has created are working. The costs are coming down. It is getting greener. It is more reliable. We are having less rolling blackouts. What California is doing is working. So EDAM, I believe it will work, just my opinion. It might take some time to get it dialed in just right. But what EDAM is, I make something on the spot. I'm going to use like Uber or Lyft, whatever, for example. If you need a ride right now, you might pay a premium for the ride right now. But they have a market for that now. That's like what EIM is, right? EDAM is if they said, hey, you know something? What if you're a Lyft driver or Uber driver or whatever, and said, if you want to schedule yourself to drive someone 1 week from today, and you go, yeah, well, let me know a week in advance, and here's the price for 1 week in advance. That's what EDAM is. It's the same short-term thing, just asking it further ahead, so to speak. So, but what's the point of these markets? Why have these markets? What's the point? If you want to buy power for many, many years, if you want power in California, you're buying power in California. Truckee's unique because we have power lines connected into NV Energy coming up the hill. So we're unique. But the vast majority of utilities in California, that's where the power supply comes from. If you want to buy power from Wyoming, it's very, very difficult because they're not in our markets. How would they get paid? So they create the EIM to expand the market to other states outside of California. So if you're a generator in Wyoming, you get to actually make some more money by helping support the needs of California. And I say that way because our rates are higher. We pay more here than they do there. So they're going to make more money off California and help balance our grid because we're not building a power plaza in California, right? So the purpose of EDAM is to incentivize power plants to build more power plants. And you remember, you turn on the most efficient ones first. That's how the game works. So, but is to build more generation sources. So that's what EDAM, hopefully that kind of helps with understand what EDAM is, this market that's being created. It is west-wide. So it's, you can do almost Mississippi over at this point in time. It's all the west. And so generators are bidding into that now. There is another one, though, that is spun up at the exact same time called Markets Plus. So you don't have to join Markets Plus, so EDAM, you could join Markets Plus instead. You could join either of them, but you have an opportunity to make more money as a generator if you join one of those markets. It's another revenue stream, right? So you don't have to join that. We don't know when they'll join it. They might switch. They might join both for all we know. These things are still up in the air and being decided. But the tariff that generates these things, it's to set the process to make this whole EDAM thing work. It has been filed with FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. It has passed. It will be engaged. We are now in the process of what exactly will it be? Who's the governing board of that? That's all being built right now. So a lot of questions to come.
And is this direction advantageous for TDPUD? This EDAM direction? I mean, I just sort of listening to, this change, and I was trying to equate, is that going to end up being higher rates for our ratepayers, or is this actually going to be a good thing in the end for us?
Yeah, sorry. Best way to answer that would say, first of all, there's no way to really know for sure. I can give you my real rough opinion of it, and we do a lot of meetings at UAMPS and NCPA and other folks trying to figure this out, mostly at UAMPS, because that's very new for them to be in the California markets, besides for us. If you own a generator right now, let's just say we own a generator in Truckee, and a new market was spun up, we have another new place of acquiring more revenue to pay for that generator. So if you have a generator in your town, so to speak, you're probably going to make more money. It's a new market. You didn't get rid of a market. You added one other market while these are still running. If you don't have a generator in your territory, you might be paying that other generator next door, so to speak, to run for you. So in Truckee, because we don't have a generator in Truckee that we own and operate, there is more risk for us that it will increase our costs, more risk. If we play it right, there are ways we could potentially make it advantageous for us. If we had a battery, it would be like a generator. I don't know why I'm doing this. It's a generator. We would use it when the market prices were doing well. We don't have that yet. So we have some exposure. It does increase our risk, but that isn't to say it'll cost us a fortune. We don't know yet.
Lastly, I was glad to see that we're ahead of the state of California in our renewables, so that's a good thing. Good job there. That's it.
It is fascinating, the market overlay, the financial, economic overlay onto the, traditionally it's just been physically, transmission and generation problems, right? Physical problems. And now we're opening up a whole new landscape of market problems, or not necessarily problems, like you said, solutions, challenges, opportunities. This is kind of, it basically looks to me like all sorts of economic evolution. That's really all it is. So, and we are changing the grid. We're changing what our transmission grid looks like and how it functions. And of course, that's going to open up a whole bunch of, as you said, challenges and opportunities. So I really, really appreciate having you here to answer all these questions, or just or help us understand how things are evolving. Which again, we've seen it coming for a while now, and now we're almost in the thick of it. So it's an exciting time. So anyhow, that's my input. Does anybody have?
Can you remind me again what the dates are for EDAM to be implemented?
Yeah, so the expectation of one of the things I want to talk about tonight and bring up the terms was July of next year is when I expect us to get our first invoice that says EDAM. Just like we get an invoice now from NV Energy that says EIM. We have for the past number of years, 5 years, whatever. So that's when I think it'll come first. But that being said, we won't actually see it that way. And also, one thing that'll be a little curveball, it'll come from the CAISO, because the California Independent, they are running EDAM. So that's who will send us the bill. But in the first ones we'll get will be the Pacific Core territory, which means it'll be in our UAMPS bill. So we won't get a physical bill from CAISO to here. But when NV Energy joins, I expect, like EIM, we will get a physical bill that says EDAM, but from CAISO, not from NV Energy, because they're the operator. Or credit. It's not always going to be a bill. It could be a credit. It could also be zero. So let's not assume it's always going to cost more money. EIM is another market too. We get credits many months. We get bills other months across the year for the past few years. It is a credit, about $250,000 per year that we've been credited. So not always bad.
No, it's confusing, but and I guess maybe the way I see it is the way we've been doing business based on where we are located will change, because perhaps more other entities in California will now have access to some of the nuances that we've had sort of in our court for so many years, and not the rest of California. So that'll be really interesting to see how that plays out for us, because I think we've been fortunate, in my opinion, to have our positioning and our partners and the direction of the way our power comes in, which gives us access to what EDAM sounds like it's going to give access to other utilities in California. So that'll be a real interesting thing. So I would appreciate it to keep us informed on how those things are rolling out.
Actually, the way you put it there is actually a very elegant way of saying it. The advantage we've had because of our location and our strategic planning has allowed us to take advantage of generation not in our state. What we do sometimes take power of California, that's the EIM one, but now EDAM allows other folks to take advantage of things that we've been kind of cruising with for a while and just under the radar there. It opens it up. That's actually a very good way of putting it.
I understood.
I'm gonna use that one, actually.
No, thanks, and like I said, keep us abreast of what's going on, because it sounds like it could have some interesting times ahead.
Okay, well, if we have no more questions or comments, I am happy to entertain a motion. Someone wants to make one.
I'll do it. I'll move to accept the recommendation here to accept and direct staff to file this report on the district's actual versus budgeted purchase power costs and energy consumption for fiscal year '24.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Very good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No nays? Motion passes. And I believe that brings us to the end of our open session meeting. So we will be moving on to closed session with 2 items as per the agenda. Do we have any public comment on closed session? Okay, great. Then shall we?
Thank you.